I'm the eldest daughter in my family, the one who always followed the rules and did what I was told. From the moment I finished college, I knew I had to support my family. There was no second thought, no hesitation, just a sense of responsibility that was placed on my shoulders from a very young age. I moved to a different city for work, took a small apartment and started building a life where most of my salary went back home. My parents were proud of me, or at least that's what I thought. They often said, "You're the responsible one. You understand things better." And I believed them every single time. My younger sister Sonia, on the other hand, was always the star of the house. She never had to lift a finger. She wanted something, she got it. Whether it was a new phone, a designer dress, or even a sudden vacation with her friends, my parents somehow always managed to make it happen for her. And when they couldn't afford it, they would call me. "Beta, Sonia needs this. She's still young. She deserves some happiness," they'd say with that soft tone that made it sound like a small request. I never said no. Not even once. Even when I was struggling to manage rent or skipping meals to save money, I made sure the money reached home on time. I convinced myself that this is what families do. I told myself, they need you. You're strong enough to handle it. It wasn't that I didn't notice the imbalance. I did. I noticed how my efforts were praised in silence while Sonia was celebrated like a queen. But still I stayed quiet. Maybe because I didn't want to be seen as selfish. Maybe because somewhere deep down I just wanted their approval, even if I had to earn it through sacrifice. Birthdays, anniversaries, even Diwali decorations, I sent money for everything. I missed most family events because of work, but I always made sure my presence was felt through my support. Sonia would send me selfies from those celebrations, always smiling, always surrounded by people. Me. I would smile at my phone, sitting alone in my rented flat, telling myself that one day all of this would be worth it. One evening, just as I was about to log off from work, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice sounded excited, almost glowing through the speaker. "We're planning Sonia's wedding," she said like it was the happiest news in the world. I froze for a second. My baby sister's wedding? A part of me was genuinely happy, but there was also a strange tightness in my chest. Maybe because no one had even mentioned she was seeing someone. Maybe because I had always imagined I'd be there when she chose her dress, or when our family would sit together and plan everything, laughing over tea like the old days. Then came the ask. "You know things are tight here, Beta," Mom said gently, almost like she'd rehearsed it. "Could you help us with the expenses? We don't want to do anything cheap for Sonia. She deserves a good wedding." I paused. I really did. Not because I didn't want to help, but because I had just started putting together my savings for something of my own. A small business I had been dreaming about for years. But those words, "she deserves it," hit something inside me. Like I didn't. Like I never had. Still, I swallowed that feeling and said yes. I didn't even ask how much they needed. I just transferred nearly everything I had saved. It was a big amount. The kind that made my stomach ache a little when I hit send. They were overjoyed. "You'll be part of everything," Mom said. "We'll call you for every little detail." She sounded so sure, so grateful in that moment that I told myself I'd done the right thing. I imagined the calls we'd have, what kind of decor, which lehenga, the music playlist. I pictured myself standing beside Sonia, adjusting her veil, being part of every memory. But then, silence. A week passed. Then another. No calls. No messages. I thought maybe they were busy, so I didn't push. I sent a casual text. "How's the planning going?" No reply. I waited. Days turned into weeks. I refreshed my phone constantly, checking for any notification. I told myself not to overthink, but deep down I knew something was wrong. Every time I tried to call, they either didn't pick up or responded with a rushed, "We'll call you later, Beta. Things are crazy here." But that call never came. Not once did they ask me for my opinion, not even to show me pictures or share excitement. I felt like an outsider watching something I helped build from behind a closed window. It started eating me up slowly. I couldn't sleep properly, wondering what was happening. Was the date fixed? Had they chosen a venue? I didn't even know the name of the guy Sonia was marrying. I had sent them everything, my money, my trust, my love, and all I got in return was silence. Cold, loud silence that grew heavier with each passing day. It was a regular morning at the office, nothing unusual. I was sipping my coffee, trying to focus on a report, when one of my coworkers walked up to me with her phone in her hand. She smiled and said, "Hey, is this your sister? She's so pretty." I leaned over, confused, and that's when I saw it. There she was, Sonia, dressed like a princess in a bright red bridal lehenga, with flowers in her hair and a glow on her face I hadn't seen in years. The caption read, "Fairy tale wedding vibes. #SoniaWedsy." My heart dropped. The post wasn't from Sonia's account. It was shared by someone else, probably a guest. I clicked the tag and more photos popped up. There were at least 50 pictures already. Everyone was there, our uncles, aunts, even the neighbors from our old street. Smiling, laughing, dancing. I saw the same decorations, the lights, the joy, everything I had imagined. Except one thing was missing. Me. I wasn't in a single photo because I wasn't even there. My hands started shaking. My eyes blurred from the tears that suddenly filled them. I excused myself and rushed to the restroom. I locked the door and sat on the cold tile floor trying to breathe. My baby sister got married. I wasn't told the date, the venue, or even the groom's name. And now I was seeing it like some random stranger scrolling through social media. I called home. Once. Twice. 4 times. No answer. I sent a message to Mom. Is Sonia married? Why didn't anyone tell me? No reply. Hours later I got a message. Just one dry line that felt like a knife to my heart. It was a small function. No outsiders. Outsiders? Was that what I had become? I stared at that message for what felt like forever. I kept reading it over and over, thinking maybe I missed something. Maybe there was a typo. Maybe it wasn't meant for me. But it was. And it was crystal clear. In their eyes, I wasn't part of their circle anymore. That night, I cried like I hadn't cried in years. Not even when I left home for the first time. Not even when I was broke and alone in a strange city. But this shattered something inside me that I didn't even know could break. I had poured my heart into that family. I had given up so much. My dreams, my comfort, my happiness, so they could have theirs. And in return, I wasn't even worth an invitation. I curled up in bed, holding my phone like it could give me answers. But all it gave me was silence. Cold, cruel silence. I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Or worse, was I ever enough? I couldn't bring myself to go to work the next day. Or the day after that. I just stayed in my small apartment, curtains drawn, phone on silent. The world outside kept moving, but I couldn't. I was stuck in this heavy silence that wrapped around me like a blanket I didn't ask for. I didn't eat much, didn't speak to anyone. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the past 10 years. Every sacrifice, every transfer, every tear I hid from them so they wouldn't worry. All those years I thought I was doing the right thing. I believed that love meant giving without expecting anything in return. I convinced myself that being the responsible one was something noble. But now it felt like a joke. A cruel joke where the punchline was my own exclusion. They used me. And the worst part? They didn't even think twice about it. I thought about calling them again. I thought about screaming, demanding answers, forcing them to see what they did to me. But then I stopped myself. What would that change? Would they magically regret it? Would they apologize? I knew the answer deep down. They wouldn't. Because to them I was just a reliable source of help, not someone worth celebrating. And that realization, it flipped a switch inside me. I didn't want to cry anymore. I didn't want to beg to be included in their joy. I didn't want to sit in a corner waiting for scraps of love and attention. No. I wanted to rise. Not for them. Not to prove anything to Sonia or my parents. But for me. For the girl who had given everything and got nothing. For the woman who deserved more than leftovers. So I got up. I wiped my tears. I cleaned my apartment like I was preparing for a fresh start. I took out the old journal where I had once scribbled ideas for my dream business, the one I had pushed aside again and again for their needs. I reopened those pages with new eyes. It was time to stop giving away pieces of myself for people who never saw my worth. This wasn't going to be a loud fight. It was going to be silent, steady, and powerful. My success would speak louder than any words ever could. A few days later, I found the strength to go back to work. I kept my head down, did my tasks, and smiled when people talked about Sonia's fairy tale wedding that was still floating around on social media. No one knew what I was going through inside. But quietly, something had shifted in me. I no longer felt helpless, I felt focused. Like I was slowly putting the pieces back together, only this time for myself. One evening, while going through some old files on my computer, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. It had documents, property records, agreements, receipts. And right there, clear as day, was a document that made my heart stop. The house. The very same house where Sonia's wedding had happened. It was mine. I had bought that house 6 years ago when I got a good deal through a colleague. I didn't have time to live in it, so I let my parents move in. I wanted them to have comfort, and back then I didn't think twice. The papers were in my name, the utilities under my ID. I had paid every bill for that house, every little repair, every upgrade they ever asked for. And yet they used it like it was theirs, like I didn't exist. I stared at the papers for a long time. My chest was tight with disbelief and a strange mix of pain and power. They hadn't even had the decency to invite me into my own home. I decided I wasn't going to let this go. The next day I met with a lawyer. A calm, collected woman who listened to everything. She didn't flinch when I told her about the wedding. She just nodded, looked at the documents and said, "You have full rights. We can proceed whenever you're ready." And we did. Quietly, legally, and without any chaos. Within a week the process was started. Papers were served. Notices were sent. I didn't inform my family. I let the documents speak for me. No phone calls. No warnings. They wanted me out of their celebrations, so I gave them the silence they seemed to prefer. During this process I also checked the joint bank account I still had with my parents. It was something I had kept over the years just to make transfers easier when they needed money. I hadn't looked at the transactions in a while. But when I did, my stomach turned. Right after I had sent that large amount for the wedding, there was a massive withdrawal. The money had gone straight into paying for a 5-star honeymoon package. Flights, hotel bookings, and spa treatments. Not for me. Not even for the couple, as a gift from someone else. It was my money. And just like that, I had enough. I went online and froze the account. Locked it down. Changed the passwords, removed access, and contacted the bank to make sure no further withdrawals could happen. No warning. No message. Just action. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to beg them to understand how much it hurt. I had spent my whole life explaining myself, justifying why I mattered. But now I finally realized I didn't have to. I wasn't going to scream or post anything or cry in front of anyone. I was just going to take back what I gave. Quietly. Firmly. Completely. And this time no one could erase me from the picture. 2 weeks passed, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a strange sense of peace. The house was no longer theirs, my money was protected, and I was finally beginning to heal. My routine at work started to feel like normal again, and while the pain of betrayal still lingered, it wasn't all-consuming. I had reclaimed control over my life. But then one afternoon my phone started buzzing nonstop. At first I ignored it, figuring it was work or one of my friends. But as the calls kept coming, I finally picked up. It was Mom. "Beta, please. You have to listen. We're locked out. The house, we don't know what happened. We can't get in." I froze. For a moment I couldn't even process the words. Locked out. They thought they could just waltz back in after everything? After everything I had done for them? After they had shut me out and made me feel like an outsider? I took a deep breath and then calmly replied, "You said I wasn't family. So I assumed you'd have your own place by now." There was a long silence on the other end. Then I heard her voice crack, "Please. Please talk to me, Beta. We've made a mistake." I could feel my heart harden as I spoke. "I can't talk to outsiders." The words were sharp, cold, deliberately so. I couldn't let them twist me into feeling guilty. I couldn't let them pretend that nothing had happened. Mom kept pleading, but I didn't budge. Sonia's voice followed, but I could barely recognize it through the desperation. Then the next shock came. Sonia's new husband, Amit, called. His voice was full of anger, demanding to know why I had locked them out, why I had taken everything. He went on about how family was supposed to support each other and how this was ridiculous. It was like a slap in the face hearing him speak to me like that after everything they had done. But I wasn't scared. I didn't even feel the need to explain myself. Instead, I calmly responded, "If you have any issues, you can contact my lawyer. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to assist." A heavy silence followed before he stammered, "You can't just..." Before he could finish, I hung up. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I had already warned them. I wasn't about to be pushed around any longer. I went straight to my lawyer and sent Amit a legal notice. A formal one. It laid out everything, his illegal access, his threats, and the consequences if he dared to continue. The next few days were eerily quiet. I didn't hear from them again for a while, but I knew they were scrambling. I knew they were feeling the heat of the situation. Their little fairy tale had been shattered, and now they had to deal with the fallout. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect. It was about me taking back control, not just of the house but of my own life. The months that followed were a blur of change. The pain from the betrayal slowly started to fade as I focused on myself, on my own growth, my own dreams, and my own happiness. At work, things were looking up. My boss noticed my hard work and dedication, and just a few weeks after the entire drama with my family unfolded, I got promoted. It was the recognition I deserved but never expected. The feeling of being acknowledged for my abilities, my skills, and my relentless drive. It was better than any apology I could have received. The promotion didn't just change my career. It changed how I saw myself. I wasn't just someone they could use. I was someone who was respected and capable. With the promotion came a move to a new apartment. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was mine. It was a fresh start. The walls felt like a clean slate, a place where I could build new memories that weren't tainted by my past. I decorated it carefully, choosing pieces that made me feel good, things that reflected my taste, my journey, and my strength. The feeling of independence, of standing on my own, was liberating. And one of the first things I did in my new apartment was block every single one of them. Mom, Sonia, Amit. No more calls. No more messages. I didn't want to be reminded of the people who had never truly seen me. I wanted my peace. A year later, I received an invitation to a wedding. It wasn't from anyone in my family, but from a colleague I had become close to over time. I hadn't even realized how much time had passed until I saw the invitation, but something in me shifted. It wasn't a wedding of someone I had known forever. It wasn't an event where I had to put on a smile for the sake of someone else. It was for me, and it felt like a moment to celebrate my own rebirth. I went to that wedding alone, wearing a dress that made me feel beautiful. The whole day I smiled and I danced, without worrying about what others thought, without trying to be anyone I wasn't. It wasn't for my family, for my past, or for anyone else in the room. It was for me. For the woman I had become. The woman who finally learned how to stop giving and start living. And that night, I realized that I didn't need their approval or validation anymore. I had found my own worth. And that, in itself, was the greatest victory. People often say that revenge is about hurting others, about making them feel the same pain they caused you. But I've learned the real revenge isn't about destruction. It's about healing, about rising higher than you ever thought possible, and most importantly, it's about stopping the cycle. It's about letting go of the anger and moving forward, not just for your own peace, but to show them that their betrayal couldn't break you. I wasn't the girl who begged for a seat at their table anymore. I didn't chase after their approval or try to earn their love. No, I built my own table. A table where I decided who could sit and who could stay out. And when it came to my family, they weren't invited. The silence between us was louder than any words could ever be. It spoke volumes, louder than any angry confrontation or argument. The silence said everything. It said I had moved on, I had thrived, and I was stronger without them. And that was my revenge. Because in the end, when you stop looking back, you realize that the best way to hurt those who've wronged you is to be so successful and happy without them, they can't even find a place in your story anymore.